The email arrived on a humid Thursday afternoon, its subject line glowing on Amara Jackson's laptop screen, invitation to appear on Rise and Reflect. Amara, founder of Solstice Energy Solutions, leaned back in her worn leather chair, the faint hum of her office in Atlanta filling the silence. The message was concise, almost too concise. The producers of Rise and Reflect, a national morning show with millions of viewers, wanted her as a guest to discuss the future of green technology. It sounded promising, but Amara wasn't naive. She'd built her solar energy empire from a single prototype in her garage to a company that had just clinched a $150 million contract with the state of Georgia. Success like hers didn't come without scrutiny, or agendas. At 38, Amara was a force of nature, tall, with a commanding presence softened by warm brown eyes that could pierce through pretense. Her hair, a cascade of tight curls, framed a face that carried both determination and the faint scars of a life hard-earned. Raised in a working-class neighborhood in Savannah, she'd grown up watching her mother stitch clothes late into the night to keep the lights on. That image, her mother's hands moving tirelessly under a flickering lamp, had fueled Amara's relentless drive. Solstice wasn't just a business, it was a mission to bring clean energy to communities like the one she'd come from. Her COO, Jamal Carter, poked his head into her office, his brow furrowed. "You see this yet?" He held up his phone, showing the same email forwarded from their PR team. "They're calling it the Green Revolution segment. Sounds noble, right?" Amara smirked, folding her arms. "Too noble. You know how these shows work. They'll dress it up as inspiration, then try to poke holes in it. I've seen it 100 times." Jamal nodded, leaning against the doorframe. He was her right hand, a wiry man with a quick laugh and a sharper mind. "So, you're saying no?" "I'm saying I'm thinking." She tapped her fingers on the desk, staring at the email. National exposure could catapult Solstice into new markets, but it could also invite the kind of skepticism that had dogged her career, whispers that her success was less about innovation and more about checking boxes. She'd heard it all: diversity hire, affirmative action darling, lucky break. None of it accounted for the sleepless nights, the rejected loan applications, or the years she'd spent teaching herself engineering from library books. "Look," Jamal said, stepping closer, "if you do this, you control the narrative. You're not some rookie they can trip up. You're Amara Jackson, queen of solar tech. They don't know who they're messing with." She chuckled, but her mind was racing. The last time she'd done a big interview, a local reporter had asked if her race had helped her secure grants. She'd shut it down with a smile and a statistic: black-owned businesses received less than 1% of venture capital, but the sting lingered. This time, on a stage like Rise and Reflect, the stakes were higher. The host, Claire Hensley, was a polished veteran known for her tough but fair style. Amara had watched enough clips to know fair was subjective. "All right," she said finally, sitting up straighter. "Tell them yes. But I'm not walking in blind. Get me everything: Claire's past interviews, the show's ratings, their audience demographics. If they want a fight, I'll give them one they won't forget." Jamal grinned. "That's my girl." The day of the taping arrived like a storm rolling in slow and heavy. Amara flew to New York, her team in tow, and stepped into the gleaming studios of Rise and Reflect. The green room smelled of coffee and hairspray, a stark contrast to the earthy scent of her workshop back home. A producer, a jittery woman with a headset, briefed her with clipped efficiency: 5 minutes to mic up, Ms. Jackson. Claire's excited to meet you. The words felt hollow, transactional. As Amara sat in the makeup chair, a monitor flickered to life, showing the live feed. Claire was wrapping up a segment on celebrity fitness trends, her blonde hair catching the studio lights like a halo. Then came the transition: up next, a black entrepreneur's rise in green tech. Is it innovation or opportunity? Amara's stomach tightened. There it was, the bait. They weren't here to celebrate her, they were here to question her. She adjusted her blazer, deep green, a nod to Solstice, and took a breath. She'd faced worse than this, bank managers who'd laughed her out of their offices, competitors who'd sabotaged her bids. Claire Hensley might have a microphone and a million viewers, but Amara had something stronger, truth forged in fire. The set was bright, all soft curves and pastel tones, designed to feel cozy. Amara took her seat across from Claire, who greeted her with a smile that didn't quite reach her blue eyes. Amara Jackson, Claire began, her voice honeyed, founder of Solstice Energy Solutions. You've gone from a garage startup to a major player in renewable energy. That's quite a story. Thank you, Amara said, keeping her tone even. It's been a journey. Claire nodded, flipping a note card. Let's dive in. Your company just secured a massive contract with Georgia, $150 million to install solar grids in underserved areas. That's a win most startups dream of. How'd you pull it off? Amara leaned forward slightly. We built a system that's efficient, affordable, and scalable. It's not just about tech, it's about access. Communities that've been ignored by big energy companies? We're powering them up. That's what won the contract. Claire's smile tightened. Impressive. But some say Solstice had an edge. Government incentives for minority-owned businesses, for instance. Did those play a role? There it was, the first jab. Amara didn't flinch. Incentives exist, sure. But they don't build prototypes or win bids. We outperformed 3 major firms, 2 of them white-owned, legacy companies with decades of connections. Our tech was better. Period. Claire tilted her head, unfazed. So, you're saying race had nothing to do with it? I'm saying talent did. Amara's voice was calm but firm. When a white CEO wins a contract, you don't ask if their skin color helped. You assume they earned it. I'd like the same assumption. A murmur rippled through the studio crew. Claire shifted, her composure intact but her eyes narrowing. She wasn't done, not by a long shot. Amara braced herself, knowing the real battle was just beginning. What she didn't know was that Claire had a twist up her sleeve, one that would test Amara's fire like never before, and leave the country watching in stunned silence. The studio lights burned hotter as Claire Hensley leaned in, her polished demeanor masking the edge in her voice. Amara, you've built an inspiring narrative, Garage to Glory, a black woman breaking barriers. But let's explore that journey. You grew up in Savannah, single-parent home, no fancy degrees. How does someone like you leap to this level? Amara caught the undertone, someone like you, but kept her cool. Hard work and necessity. My mom raised me on a seamstress's wage. I learned early that if you want something, you build it yourself. I taught myself coding, studied solar physics from free resources, and turned my garage into a lab. That's how. Claire nodded, but her eyes gleamed with intent. A classic bootstrap story. Yet, some might wonder if there was more to it, mentors, grants, maybe a lucky break tied to your identity? Amara's jaw tightened, but she smiled faintly. Luck? No. I had rejection, banks that wouldn't touch me, investors who said solar was a fad. My break was working 18-hour days while everyone else slept. As for mentors, the closest I had was my mom telling me, don't quit. That's it. The audience stirred, a few nods breaking the stillness. Claire pressed on, undeterred. Fair enough. But today, opportunities for black entrepreneurs are unprecedented, affirmative action, diversity quotas. Don't those give you an advantage others don't have? Amara exhaled, her patience thinning. Opportunities? Let's talk numbers. Black women own less than 0.5% of tech firms. We get crumbs of funding compared to others. If there's an advantage, I missed it. What I got was a system that made me prove myself 10 times over. Claire's smile sharpened. So, you don't credit those programs at all? They're a lifeline for some, Amara admitted. But they don't hand you success. I didn't pitch my race, I pitched my tech. Georgia didn't buy solar panels because I'm black, they bought them because they work. A flicker of unease crossed Claire's face, but she pivoted smoothly. Let's shift gears. Perception matters, Amara. Some argue that stories like yours, Black Entrepreneur, Overcoming Odds, get amplified because they're marketable. Does that bother you? Amara laughed softly, a sound that carried weight. You're saying I get too much attention? In a world where most CEOs look nothing like me, where funding flows to the same old networks? If my story's loud, it's because I had to scream to be heard. The room shifted, crew members exchanged glances, the audience leaned in. Claire, sensing the tide, reached for her ace. One last question, she said, setting her cards down dramatically. Your contract, it's public record that Solstice missed deadlines on a smaller project last year. Some say that raises doubts about your capacity. Was this big win a fluke? The trap snapped shut. Amara felt the heat rise, but she didn't blink. You're digging now, Claire. Yes, we had delays, supply chain issues, not incompetence. We still delivered, and our clients stayed. That fluke you mentioned? It's a system that's now powering 50,000 homes. Check the data. Claire opened her mouth, but Amara wasn't done. And since we're on perception, let's flip it. When a white-led firm misses a deadline, it's a hiccup. When I do, it's proof I don't belong. I'm not here for your doubts, I'm here because I'm undeniable. The silence was electric. Claire's composure cracked, just for a second, before she forced a nod. We'll be right back, she said, voice tight, as the cameras cut. Amara leaned back, her pulse steady. She'd turned the trap into a triumph, but the real twist was coming. Backstage, the air buzzed with tension. Producers whispered furiously as Amara sipped water, her mind replaying the exchange. She'd held her ground, but Claire's last move, the project delay, felt personal, a calculated jab. As she stepped into the hall, Jamal met her, eyes wide. You crushed it. Social media's exploding, #AmaraUnfiltered is trending. Good, she said, but her gut told her the fight wasn't over. Claire emerged from the set, her smile gone, replaced by a steely gaze. Off the record, she said, voice low, you're good, Amara. But don't think this is the end. Amara raised an eyebrow. Never do. The broadcast resumed, and Claire shifted tactics. Amara, your passion's clear. But let's address the elephant in the room. You've said the system's rigged, yet here you are, proof it works. Isn't that a contradiction? Amara locked eyes with her. No. One survivor doesn't mean the war's won. I'm here because I outworked the odds, not because they disappeared. Claire pounced. But isn't that resentment talking? You've criticized big energy firms for gatekeeping. Maybe this is personal. It's factual, Amara shot back. Those firms sit on billions, hoard patents, and leave communities in the dark. I'm not resentful, I'm holding them accountable. Then came the twist. Claire leaned forward, voice dropping. Accountability's a big word. Let's talk about yours. Sources say Solstice's contract came after a closed-door meeting with state officials, off the books. Care to explain? The studio hushed. Amara's heart skipped, not from fear but fury. This was the real play, insinuation dressed as journalism. Sources, she said coolly. Name them. I'll wait. Claire hesitated. It's industry chatter. No, Amara cut in, voice rising. You don't get to smear me with chatter. That meeting? It was a pitch, standard, legal, and one on merit. You want to talk closed doors? Ask your sources about the backroom deals their companies thrive on. The audience gasped. Claire faltered, then recovered. So, you deny any favoritism? I deny your narrative, Amara said, turning to the camera. America, here's the truth, I'm a black woman who built something better than the gatekeepers. They hate that. So they send people like Claire to twist it. But I'm still standing. The room erupted, applause, murmurs, chaos. Claire called for a break, but the damage was done. Online, the clip went viral, splitting the nation. Some cheered her defiance, others cried foul. Then, the revelation hit. An ex-post from an anonymous whistleblower claimed Claire's source was a rival CEO who'd lost the bid, a white man with a grudge. The twist wasn't just Amara's win, it was the exposure of the game itself. By evening, the story was everywhere. Cable news dissected Amara's words, X lit up with memes of her camera stare down. The whistleblower's post, verified by journalists, named Richard Hale, CEO of Apex Energy, as Claire's tipster. Hale had lobbied hard against Solstice, alleging bias, only to be outed as the real schemer. Rise and Reflect issued a tepid apology, but Amara didn't care. She'd turned their ambush into a megaphone. Back in Atlanta, her office buzzed with energy. Jamal handed her a coffee, grinning. You didn't just win, you rewrote the rules. Amara shrugged, but pride glinted in her eyes. They thought they'd break me. They forgot who I am. The fallout was seismic. Solstice's stock soared, inquiries flooded in from across the globe. More than that, Amara's words sparked a movement. #Undeniable became a rallying cry for entrepreneurs of color. She spoke at schools, launched a fund for young inventors, and kept building. Claire's career took a hit, her credibility dented, but Amara didn't gloat. She'd already moved on. Years later, standing at a podium for Solstice's IPO, Amara looked out at a sea of faces, some like hers, some not, and smiled. They asked if I deserved this, she said. I didn't answer with words. I answered with work. And that's the legacy I leave you, be undeniable. America watched, not in shock anymore, but in awe.